Polish Foreign Minister Sikorski has a grand idea, actually a resurrected idea. It was rejected during the Biden administration, but now he wants a no-fly zone to protect Europe from Russian strikes. We, as NATO and the EU, could be capable of doing this, but it is not a decision that Poland can make alone. It can only be made with its allies. Protection for our population, for example, from falling debris, mentioning the drones that were allegedly passed from Russia into Poland over the weekend, would naturally be greater if we could combat drones and other flying objects beyond our territorial integrity. If Ukraine were to ask us to shoot them down over its territory, that would be advantageous for us. Now, what do you suppose would be the reaction in Russia if Polish aircraft started shooting down Russian drones on Ukrainian territory?
Well, it wouldn't just be Russian drones. Drones and other flying objects, he says. I have great respect for the Poles. They have faced up to their geopolitical situation. They're now spending over 4% of their GDP on defense. They have developed a formidable relationship with South Korea. Their aircraft, their tanks, their armored fighting vehicles are all coming from there. They have, they're in a political military sense, they've done everything right. I don't know why the drones got over Poland, but I think the most plausible explanation is electronic warfare disrupted their navigation ability. I mean, this is an area of very intense efforts to confuse the navigation systems aboard drones, and it may have worked. In any event, I don't automatically jump to the conclusion, as NATO prefers to do, that this was some probe of NATO's resolve. I don't think the Russians want to take on the Poles. And I think trying to, here's the basic point, Danny. Europeans, the coalition of the deluded, have not put forward a peace proposal of any kind. Every proposal they've made has been how to continue the war, how to expand it. This falls into that category. If Poland starts shooting at Russians over Ukraine, the Russians are going to shoot back. And they've already said this. Think about the German debate over whether to supply the Taurus missile to Ukraine. Russians said, if you do that, we will take out the factory where they're made in Germany. So the Germans decided, okay, we'll just ship parts to Ukraine. They can assemble the parts in Ukraine. The Russians then took out the assembly plant. I mean, do not underestimate the seriousness of purpose of your enemy, whoever that may be, whether it's North Korea, North Vietnam, the Taliban, whoever, the Iraqi insurgents, whoever it is. You can't assume that because you bash them, they're just going to give up. Or because you escalate, they're not going to counter-escalate. So much as I respect Mr. Sikorski, I know him personally from years ago when I was at the Defense Department. I think he's all wet on this subject.
Well, that pretty well clears that up in terms of, I mean, it's kind of it's a bad situation here, and we'll just keep seeing what ends up happening, and probably it is going to get drug out for a lot longer to the chagrin and probably the ultimate demise of the Ukrainian armed forces. In the remaining time I got with you, though, I want to shift gears over to the Middle East, which you mentioned before here, and certainly since we've had you on the last time, there was a pretty big incident. I wonder if you could kind of put us in context for us as someone who spent some time in the Middle East in the Israeli attack on the Hamas negotiators in Qatar. We showed earlier, I don't know that we still have it up there, but Benjamin Netanyahu made a really in-your-face denunciation of Qatar and accusing them of harboring terrorists, and said, yeah, you guys are either going to do what we say and get rid of these terrorists on your own, or we'll be doing this even some more. What shot across the bow to Middle East diplomacy does that give, and what does that mean for the process of ever ending this war with Hamas and the Palestinian people?
I think Prime Minister Netanyahu delivered an even more ominous and threatening message, which was that Israel does not respect the sovereignty of any country in its region and reserves the right and has the intention of violating their sovereignty at will when it considers that to be to its advantage. I'll make a number of other comments about this particular attack on the Hamas delegation, which was assembled in Doha, the capital of Qatar, to consider an American proposal, probably written by the Israelis, for a resolution of the Gaza conflict. So this is a pattern. We now see several examples of it. Negotiators from Iran who are planning to go to Muscat to meet with the United States to discuss a resolution of our differences, see that meeting used as concealment for an attack by Israel, a surprise attack, a sort of false reassurance. We now see the same pattern with the Hamas delegation in Qatar. The United States is part of a ruse attracting Hamas to a location where they can be concentrated and murdered. We see a pattern. If you negotiate with Israel, Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh, assassinated in Iran, in Tehran, he was there as a state guest at the inauguration of the new Iranian president, Pezeshkian, murdered by the Israelis. And it doesn't appear that the United States and Donald Trump, our president, object in any respect to these assassinations and to our complicity in facilitating them. After all, in his first term of office, Donald Trump, president of the United States, assassinated Soleimani, the Iranian general who was in Baghdad to discuss peace, and was instead snuffed by us. So that's the first thing. Second thing, this means several things. Nobody is going to trust the Israelis to negotiate anything in good faith. Anybody who still does has now been disabused of that notion. Second, an American involvement with the Israelis in a so-called peace process now promises to be nothing but cover for a surprise attack. Our credibility is shot in diplomatic terms. Let me make one final comment. The United States has the largest base in the Middle East in Qatar, at Al Udeid. There are 11,000 servicemen there. The Qataris very cleverly built that base for us. It's a Qatari base that they loaned to us, right in the middle of territory they disputed with Saudi Arabia. So they got us apparently on their side in that dispute. That base has now been the subject of an Iranian symbolic, not serious, counterattack following the American bombing in collusion with Israel of Iran. That base has now served no useful purpose in defending Qatar. It apparently either was unable to detect the Israeli attack on Doha, or it was in on the job. The Qataris must be thinking seriously about the future of that base. They certainly don't want to depend anymore on the United States to defend them. There's a $42 billion set of contracts for American air defenses and so forth with Qatar. Lockheed Martin and I think RTX are the major beneficiaries of this. I wouldn't be surprised to see those contracts turned over to the Chinese, who care seriously about sovereignty and who now have the technology to replicate what our systems can do, or maybe even improve on it. People have been very dubious about the value of American protection in the region. Iran takes out a drone in the Strait of Hormuz. Donald Trump shrugs. The Houthis, who are supplied by Iran, although not directed by it, take out Abqaiq, the main oil transfer facility in the eastern province of Saudi Arabia. Donald Trump says, well, that's a Saudi problem, not ours. What are we out there for in terms of the local interest in in this. I'd ask what we're out there for for any reason. What are we defending? American interests? Very unclear. We used to try to defend oil, but we're now an oil exporter. Last time I looked, we're a competitor, not a consumer of oil from that region. Are we protecting Israel? Does Israel protect us? Or does Israel act without regard to American interests and delight in causing problems for us with other friends, so-called friends? So, I think what has happened, this was a very important event, almost as important as the meeting in Tianjin between the members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which basically brought together pretty much all of Eurasia other than Europe in opposition to American dictates. We are, to go back to the theme that you struck at the outset, we're behaving as though reality doesn't exist, as though reality is defined by our own delusions of it, and that we can go on, we can punish anybody, a career person, military or civilian, diplomat or intelligence officer, for conveying an opinion of what reality is that doesn't conform to our misperception of it. And we are flying blind. And that is not good.
And then final question is, what do you think it would take? I'm guessing we're not there yet, even with this attack on Qatar, but that we may be getting close to it. The question is how close to a time to where it's Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, any of the others, Kuwait, to say, the Jews ain't worth the squeeze, and we're going to break ties. Because remember, Trump was in the Middle East just a few months ago, and had this big celebratory, and he was feted like a king, come to town, etc. Signed all these big deals, etc. But could there be a point to where these countries altogether that are kind of friendly to us go, yeah, not worth it anymore, and turn against us? Is that possible?
I think there's been a process on their part of diversifying their reliance on foreign partners away from overdependence on the United States. This has gone on ever since 2011 and the so-called Arab Spring, when we pitched Mubarak of Egypt over the transom and fed him to the sharks rather than protecting him. And we've otherwise had a very difficult relationship, sometimes caused by people in the area. Mohammed bin Salman clearly was complicit in the murder of my friend Jamal Khashoggi, the journalist in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. And we had a bad period in relations with him under the Biden administration. Now, Donald Trump has more or less patched that up. But there's been a process going on. The Arabs are meeting right now in Doha to consider exactly the question you raised. How can we defend ourselves in a circumstance where the Americans appear to be in league with our principal enemy, which is Israel? I mean, Israel is now the focus of an effort by the Arabs and by Iran. They're being driven into the arms of Iran in order to balance Israel and its total disregard for international law, sovereignty, and the lives of the people around it. So having said all of that, I think the Arabs are very reluctant to retain their dependence on us, but there isn't anybody who can replace us militarily. We are the only people dumb enough to project forces into the Persian Gulf and have the capability to do it. And nobody else wants to do it, and they don't have the capability. The Chinese, for example, the Russians, they have other things on their hands. Now, they don't want to get involved in all that. We're dumb enough to do so. So, in fact, you spent some time out there as a result of that. They don't want this, but, I once gave a talk in which I pointed out that in Islam, you can have 4 wives. You don't have to have a Catholic marriage to one. And there may have been a Catholic marriage to the United States, and we may be too big to throw out of the bed, but there's some other people in there now. There are other partners. And I think this process has probably just been accelerated. Having said all that, however, and I'll end on this note, the rulers of the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, the Arab countries of the Persian Gulf, do not have a reputation for decisiveness, courage, boldness of strategic thinking, or anything else. These are very cautious, risk-averse people. So whatever they do is going to be pretty sneaky and slow. It's not going to be out there for us to object to.
Got it. Well, that certainly makes sense, and there's definitely a history of that too. But I think probably at the least we can think that there might be a few more folks in that bed, so that if they ever do need to get rid of the big one, there's other bodies to keep it warm. So we'll continue to watch and see what happens with it. And we really appreciate you coming on with this expertise today, both in the Middle East and as well as in Europe. Thank you very much.
No problem. Glad to be with you.
And we appreciate you guys too. And would ask one more time, if you wouldn't mind, like and subscribe before you leave. It helps us more than you know. We really appreciate you. We'll see you on the next episode of Daniel Davis Deep Dive.